Hey everybody, welcome back to Magic Mind. You are here, my friends, because you, like me, know that magic is an art form with the ability to move and entertain people like no other. And so, my goal with this show and company is to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you to develop your magic and your mind. The name of the show is Magic Mind, and it started as a podcast for magicians, and slowly, gradually, I've been shifting over to a podcast for magicians and people who want to enhance their own mind. And so with me today, oh my gosh, I have a very, very special guest. Someone I met at TEDx Wilmington, Sunil Robert. Sunil, I could try to articulate your story, but I wouldn't do it justice. And so normally I kind of give an overview of the guest. I don't want to do that here. I want you, in your own words, to talk about your story the same way you did at Wilmington, because at that event, your story, no joke, no lie, made me cry. So if you would, please.
Thank you, Christoph. First of all, I want to tell you what a special young man you are and how my wife and I really enjoyed getting to know you at TEDx Wilmington.
Thank you.
And boy, you not only blew me away with your talk, but your personality as well. And I know when guests come on to shows such as yours, it's normally nice for them to be kind and say nice things. But let me tell you from the bottom of my heart, whenever I see young potential or whenever I see young people with a spark or something unusual about them, I get very inspired to chat up and get to know them. So in that sense, just getting connected with you and the kind words you shared after the talk really set the context for what we are doing today. So thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited about not only what this podcast could do, but I'm really excited for you and your own journey. What tremendous avenues await for you in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I can't wish you but the very best, my friend. I really am proud of you, and I'll be rooting for you as a cheerleader.
Wow, I don't know what to say. Thank you, Sunil. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for having me as a guest. Like I shared in the TEDx talk, my focus was to tell the story of my life and use it to inspire, ignite minds, and encourage them to come back. So the word comeback is very special to me, largely because all the 3 or 4 incidents that I shared in the talk had this element of comeback where, we all suffer setbacks in our lives. But what matters is not how hard you fell or how deeply you got wounded, but how hard you fight to make that comeback. So it's an abstract term. The word adversity has very abstract connotations, but all of us deal with disappointments, failures, setbacks all the time. So if we have a mindset, and again, going back to the title of your show, which is Magic of the Mind and Mind Magic, I believe our minds are far greatly endowed than we actually give them credit for. In the sense, to just give you a sense of a parallel and a metaphor, they say when you run a marathon, and I'll talk a little when I share a little about my physical adversity, but when you run a marathon, the human capacity or the physical capability within a body, you could only run 18 to 20 miles. If you just take mathematical, scientific, physical storage of your energy in your body relative to the distance you cover. But how is it that most people go beyond the physical barriers and go on to accomplish the 26.2 miles? And of course, there are some ultra marathoners and some crazy runners who push their body limits. But generally speaking, a marathoner or a regular, simple, common man on the street, how that individual pushes his mind to go the distance, surpass all the physical barriers and the limitations that are posed by biology and physics and so on. It just comes down to the strength of the mind, the mettle of your spirit. So when I told my stories at TEDx Wilmington, and I must tell you what a great platform it was. And more than telling my story, I got to meet wonderful folks such as you. But that platform set me up to tell my story, and the phenomenal feedback that I've been getting just reinforced that all of us are wounded at some stage of our lives or the other. All of us are looking for that spark, not necessarily airy fairy, motivational, short term type of bursts that lift our spirit, but stories that genuinely connect with each other. And so when stories are told without the grandioseness or grandiosity of a hero, but rather than a regular guy trying to fight, regular guy trying to overcome adversity, then the story acquires a tone and tenor that really lifts people up. So that was the common thread in all the feedback that I got, whether it is folks from India, where my story really was anchored and the background and the narrative flowed from there, or folks that we met at TEDx itself. The common refrain was, we really liked the way you shared your story. There was a lot of lightheartedness to it, and despite being such a heavy, weighty type of a topic. So, bottom line, to just answer your question and recap, the mission of my life is to transform everyone whom I come across through the power of my story, my redemption story, my story of second chances, my story of comebacks.
The power of stories is something that has fascinated me for a long time. I think just as humans, the way we've evolved storytelling, it's the way that we share, that we communicate information. And there's something special about your story that I think every story needs to have. It's a hero who starts with failure. It's a hero who starts as not a hero and becomes a hero as he goes. So I don't know, I know it's a heavy story, but if you're up for it, I would love for you to just basically share the story that you told at TEDx Wilmington. It doesn't have to be the exact same version, it can be abbreviated, but an idea of where you come from and where you are.
Sure, thank you. What and that's a classic storytelling formula. And if there are any listeners in your show who are studying the craft of storytelling, or studying the art of public speaking, or studying just how to even restructure their own life's narrative, this is a great formula to study. And so let me take on the teacher's hat and also share with you how I prepared for this topic, and I relooked at my own life, and it was easy because I had actually in the past written a book called I Will Survive, and there goes my plug.
There we go.
I Will Survive was my first effort of capturing my story. And the reason I captured that story is in our culture, in where I come from in South Asia, it's very unusual for someone to just wear their failures on their sleeve or talk about, despite poverty being almost all pervasive, or despite being located in a country where this whole life's journey is spent on climbing the escalator of success from penury to prosperity. There is that awkward, almost reticence to talk about some of the issues that I talked about. For example, when I was growing up, till the time I was about 10, 11, we were living in relative comforts. My dad has a decent job, and the family was well placed. My parents had moved from a very small hamlet to the big city. It's the fifth largest city in the south of India, called Hyderabad. So their immigrant journey from the small village to the big city was shaping up well. And then suddenly failure strikes them. My dad had lost his well paying job. So between the time 12 to the time I was 18, 19, over an arc of 7 years, our family went from that modest living to literally hand to mouth type of an existence, where you're not sure where the next meal would come from. And since you're living in a rented place, if you're not able to pay, you'll be evicted. And then and the big immigrant dream was powered that the kids or us would have access to English education, or education in the big city would then provide the passport for future success. So all our dreams were interlinked, and we literally came down to just being one step away from just total disintegration as a family. Like I said in the talk, I was twice very close to committing suicide. And how does a young person, a teenager at the age of 18, navigate this turbulent physical, emotional, spiritual changes around and within, and still try and come through with some sense of sanity, some sense of dignity is a remarkable story of this book, I Will Survive. And when I look back now, I can be grateful for adversity, but at that time I was literally resentful, angry, hateful, bitter. There was this almost maniacal energy that was just being unchanneled, and I dabbled in campus politics and student politics and got into violent situations, and so there was my life was going in, it could have gone in multiple directions. I could have become a violent gangster, or I could have become someone who's a suicide statistic. So the in a big city where poverty is almost like a given state of affairs, it's very remarkable that my story turned the way it did, from where I had to make a significant pivotal choice to not only just surviving for my own sake, but also help my three other brothers, two sisters and a brother, three of us plus me and our parents, to come through that trial by fire and somehow live to tell the story. That is the sum and substance of I Will Survive.
I don't think people quite understand. Becoming an adult isn't turning 18. It has to do with the amount of responsibility you adopt at whatever age you're at. So you can imagine when everything falls apart. You said you were 10, 11 years old. I know that's when you became an adult, when you became responsible for your siblings, for providing for your family. That's such an important shift that I think people need to understand. So just from a timeline perspective, I want to try and get a full image here. From your birth to about 10 years old, things were okay, right? Steady
Yes.
job.
About 12, yeah.
12, you said?
Yeah,
That's when your father loses his job. And that's when you begin to adopt a lot of responsibility within the family dynamic.
sure. Yeah.
Can you tell us about what that felt like for you? You talked about being depressed. You talked about the relationship between you and your father, and exactly what it felt like to be in that place.
Sure. I alluded to a bit of the negative and the the bitterness, all those plethora of emotions churning through my mind and heart. But one of the positive drivers that really drove my narrative and literally engineered my story was that my mom and I were very, very close. In the sense, my mom had me when she was about 18 or 19, and so the by the time she kind of I was 12, so at that time she was about 30, 32, around that time. And to see this beautiful young woman with four children go through this immense amount of stress in the big city, and my own inability to kind of support her and be a solid friend to her really frustrated me. So even though I was in seventh or eighth grade, I used to actually teach much younger kids to earn a few rupees. And whatever little I earned, I would actually go and give it to my mom and say, "Hey, mom, this is what I could do. What else can we do? What else can we come up with ideas to really support our family through this stage?" Uh, anger was a big element towards my dad. I hated my dad for some of the choices that he did make or he did not make or could not make to rescue us out of this escalator of poverty that we were going down so rapidly. And so all these forces, there were all these negative elements at play, but there was also this adulthood, an accelerated path to adulthood that I went through. For example, although I was in myself in high school, I would go and fight with school authorities and others to battle for my other siblings who were being ejected from schools. And I would go to these principals and headmasters and say, "You cannot do that to my brother. You cannot do that to my sister. Our futures are at stake." So you are right. The adversity accelerated my own growth, but it was not without a lot of negative emotions associated with it. So there was that love and compassion that I was really devoted to my mother, and I didn't want her to suffer because she was just lifting all the weight in the family. Then my sisters and my brother's futures were at stake, so that drove me. Plus my own desire to pursue my own life's dreams. All three elements together, we decided to fight all the circumstances that were not going our way.
And now, can you kind of bring us full circle in the plot with your dad? Because at the end of the resolution, that is the moment I cried in your
Yes.
story. So
So
please.
I shared with you that as an angry young man, I we both couldn't be in the same room. We couldn't see eye to eye. But around the time I was 19, between I finished my 18th birthday and I was heading into 19, a friend of mine dragged me to a youth camp. And in the youth camp, there was a teacher who talked about how adversity is actually your best friend. And he used the story of Daniel and the lion's den, and the Daniel and the cauldron of fire where his friends go through that. And to me, that cauldron represented the circumstances that even I was going through. And and to me, from where I come from, in a culture where staring back at your parent can just spell the death of that relationship, my father and I were really at. There was a lot of bad blood between us, and for days and months we wouldn't talk to each other, and so I discovered that if I have to have some degree of wholeness in my life, I need to piece this relationship with my dad. So after the camp, I came back. I discovered that all the violent ways that I was involved need to be changed. All the cheating, manipulating, lying, some of the things that I was indulged in, I had to reform and just get on the narrow path. So I went through a series of restoration moments where I wrote letters to people that I wronged and hurt. I went and sought forgiveness where possible and paid them back. For example, we stole a lot of stuff as a bunch of friends in a small grocery store. I went back to the small store owner, and I confessed that I had stolen from a store, and I paid him back the money. He was reluctant to take the money. He said, "This is the best story of a young man who mended his ways. I cannot take money from you now." I said, "No, at least for my peace of mind, I want to pay you back." So I paid him back that kind of a money, and so on and so forth. But external restorations and restitutions were easy, but the most difficult part was, how do I piece this relationship with my dad? So I couldn't have that awkward conversation. So I wrote a lovely letter to my dad, and I said, "Dad, these were the things that really hurt me about whatever happened to our family. I love you a lot. I want to change my angry mindset to a more loving and endearing mindset. I love you a lot. You've given me a lot of gifts, and so please forgive me for my angry, wrongful behavior." And I wrote that letter. And 3 days later, when I walked in from college, my dad just hugged me, and he did not say a word. And he was a man of few words. So just the fact that he hugged me brought that complete restitution to me. And my mom, who was getting crushed between the two of us, a husband, a loving husband who could not rise to the occasion, versus a very angry son who rose to the occasion but does not share a good relationship with her husband. All that awkwardness in that relationship between the three of us just magically melted through the power of forgiveness. So in our culture, the young ones always take the first step. I took the first step. My dad forgave me. It was magical afterward. But there's one more element to it. I did not know how much my dad would have loved me many years later, till I had my first son. And when he saw my first son, his name is Aman. My son's name is Aman. When he held Aman, and then I told my dad, and my wife was next to me. We told him, "Dad, I could never truly understand what a father's love looks like till I held Aman in my hands." So it really came a full circle for me to grow as an individual, to understand that, yeah, dads make mistakes. It was not deliberate to hurt us or intentional to hurt us. Stuff happened. But to blame him was to indirectly blame God. And so through all this transformation, I realized that, see, the key to surviving adversity is focusing your energies on what you can control and not the things that you cannot control. I couldn't control my dad. I couldn't control the situations in my life. I realized I had to take responsibility for forgiving and seeking forgiveness. So really, this remarkable story this happens all the time, but very few have the courage to say, look, I blew it with my dad. I went back and repaired it, and it really worked out well. Much later, when I first made my immigrant move to the UK, my dad was so proud of me and all my accomplishments. He would just relish it. And so just I think the greatest joy for an individual is to make their parents proud. And I know a young achiever like you would have made your parents super proud, but just giving you a story of contrast, my dad was super proud of me towards the end.
I, I, I'm almost speechless, and that's rare, Sunil. When you were telling that stories, I could feel the emotions coming right back up that I heard in TED, and I don't know why, because honestly, my relationship with my dad is great. I don't have that link, but I feel I can't explain it. It's honestly it's mind-boggling. So, anyway, where did you become so insightful? You seem to be sort of in an isolated part of India. I can't imagine what resources you had next to you. Was it really just that one youth camp that made everything click for you in your mind? The idea of becoming whole by apologizing to your father, by mending that relationship, by righting all your wrongs. Where did that all come from?
It's a series of many links in a large chain of events. I'm actually blessed. When I did not have resources, it's as if God sent me many people in the form of mentors, cheerleaders, people who are well-wishers, who love you the same, no matter how many times you blow it, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it wasn't accidental. I had to purposefully move away from, for example, in the student politics and the gangs, the moment I cut away slowly those relationships, those guys became very resentful towards me. They said, "Oh, now you're the good guy and we are the bad guys," and they would taunt me and they would not let me be at peace and stuff. But I suffered those ridiculous moments, and then I built a series of networks and friendships that were going to support me on this narrow path, because it's not easy trying to do the right thing. For example, since could not go to college, uh, like I shared, the line that I used
Yeah.
in the TED talk was, adversity barred me from college, but could not stop me from learning.
Hmm.
You remember that line? So all my supposed insights or whatever lives narratives that I go around teaching stem from using my own life's experiences and try and find frameworks and filters that fit the narrative. So I wanted to escape this spiral of poverty, and the only way I could do was not to go back to college, because if I went back to college, I was the single breadwinner, or the largest one who was bringing in the money to support our family. That would mean my family would again come back to again bare survival. So there was never a luxury of going back to college full time for me. So, like I said in the TED talk, I had to take education along with me and also try and continue to support my family with a full time job. So, literally, I labored for 7 years to get a bachelor's degree, a 2 year MBA degree, and a 2 years journalism degree. And
Wow.
yeah, and in the finally, when I came into that journalism thing, it was no longer just to educate, but a love of communication and love of journalism. I came in the top of the university for journalism. Out of the 5 gold medals, I had won 4 of them, and I missed the fifth one with just 1 point.
Wow.
So I tell young people, if your heart is in it, if you're hungry for success, if you're earnest about it, no barrier in the world should stop you and can stop you. You would just push through, push through. Again, in the world of marathon runners, there's the metaphor that called the wall. You
Yeah.
hit it around the 17th, 18th mile. or depending on how well you train, it could hit you earlier also. When you hit the wall, you feel you can't even stand, you can't even walk, you can't even run anymore. That's where you no longer trust your body, but your mind to push through the situation, and you continue and continue, you break through the wall. So my experiences literally taught me never to say no for an answer. I was in sales, so that kind of helped my DNA. You take a lot of rejection in sales, so it kind of formed in the formative years of my life. Those sales experiences really strengthened me, and so I was a teenager. For example, let me give you a small anecdote which I did not get a chance to cover in the TEDx talk.
Please.
My younger sister set her heart to become a zoologist. But when she applied to the top college in the city of Hyderabad, it was a Catholic institution. Most people said, no, she doesn't cut the grade to be accepted. And so she'll be given a seat in commerce, which was not a preferred one for her. Many people would have just taken that option and say, hey, commerce also is great in this college. But I said no. My sister was very keen to study science. I was bent upon making it happen. So for day after day, I would go to the principal's office, repeat my request, get thrown out of her office. And my office was very close to that college. So I would use my lunchtime every day for about a month or 45 days. I kept going to the college. Go after, tell the story, wait outside her office. She will say no, I would come back. After 45 days, I wore her out with my patience. And then she called me in and said, why is your dad and mom not coming? Why are you coming? I said, my dad and mom, they can't come. They are too intimidated to talk to you. I'm like, I'm the older brother. I'm like the father figure to my sister. I promise you, I'll give her extra coaching, whatever little I'm earning, I'll pay for extra support. You've got to give her a seat in science. She relented and she gave me my sister a seat in science. So my sister went on to become the first, almost finished her first PhD at the time in India, because I wouldn't take no for an answer. So that's the kind of passion you develop when you're in the face of failure. Never take no for an answer. Find a creative way. Go big. Both the degrees, people said you either have to quit your job or continue your education. You can't do both. Then I would charm my way through. I would like tell all my stories and like literally appeal to their nobler side and say, listen, I have a family to support. I can't quit, which was not, I wasn't making up stuff. That was the reality.
Yeah.
And so at some point they kind of said, hey, here's a genuine guy who's hungry to study. Let's support. So that's the story of my life, Christoph.
The more I learn about you, the more honored I am to know you. It's honestly incredible, and I regret not having had the chance to hear that story about your sister at TEDx. I'm actually starting to hear myself through your phone. Is there a way to? Okay, it's gone. It's amazing. And see, that's what I'm asking about now with the insights. How it takes such a remarkable person to just have the intuition to do that day after day after day for 45 days. That's not something a normal person would do. So Sunil, answer this for me. Where does that come from?
Oh, well, you have to make a way when you don't have a make. See, it came down to the vision that I had for my family and myself. See, my parents paid the price from coming from the small village to the big city.
Yeah.
And there was no way that dream of theirs of surviving in the big city and getting all four of us kids some decent education and get us off to good starts, that dream could not fall apart. So I realized that, stuff happens, like I said, and the only way we could control was our responses to it. So I used to coach my sisters and my brother and say, look, no matter where we go, we are carrying the legacy of our family, of our faith, of what our parents believed in. And so we could either blame circumstances or go bitter or fight it through it. So I think that motivational thing was kind of pretty early ingrained into me. And they saw me lead from the front, and they kind of, I think, followed it kind of naturally as well. They tried their best and so on. But it really comes down to what's your vision for your life like. The word vision usually has corporate connotations. the vision for the company is to be like this, and the vision. But I think it comes down to at a very mundane day-to-day level, the vision you have for your life is remarkable in the sense of what you're doing outside your profession, outside your college, outside your network. What the vision I have for my life is to transform the lives of others through my narrative. Very, very simply, how everything we do comes down to that. So the marathons that I run is part of that vision, that I, till the day I die, I would take good care of this body of mine and be a good custodian of this body and not abuse it through bad eating or bad choices, and not being active. The mind that I have, I will not abuse it with wrong literature, wrong content. That it's that mindset, or that flows out of a vision that I had for my life. And of course, strongly linked is my own faith that, all things will work together for those who are called by a purpose. And I believe that my purpose is to make a difference to whomever. See, ultimately, I believe I will not be judged by how successful I am, but I'll be judged by, relative to the resources and the opportunities that I had, was I able to be faithful in that? So I think that vision that I had for my life literally drives these insights that you alluded to.
So now, I know the TEDx story. I know all the different pieces, and there's still a couple pieces that we haven't touched on. Can you take us through the accident? Can you
Sure.
take us through that story?
Yes, it's like, just when again, if you've studied the Disney movies structure,
Yes.
I feel I'm not flattering myself, but my own narrative has strong similarities with the Disney plot.
Without a doubt. Yes.
Just when the protagonist or the hero is like on his way out, and is on his way up, and there's a bigger tragedy waiting to happen, kind of a thing. So it was around the time I was 28, 29. That year, I was having a decent job in one of the top advertising agencies in my city. My agency was winning awards for some of the work that I was doing, and my MBA was already under my belt. Confidence grew. Physically, I alluded to how good looking I was. My confidence grew. Lots of lovely curly hair. I was really, really, walking with my, chin up and head held high, and a lot of sunshine was coming back in our lives. My parents were feeling good about my sisters taking these post-graduation courses, and suddenly there was a lot of joy and sunshine in our lives. And that's the beauty about life. Just you can never tell when adversity strikes, or when what's lurking around the corner. And that's the beauty of life as well. If everything went as per our script, then life would be so unpredictable, so predictable and boring. But stuff happens, like I keep saying. So I was coming back from a business call, speeding down the highway. The next thing I know, I was woken up to the strange smells and sights of a hospital ward. I was in the intensive care unit. Doctors had removed an 8-inch piece from my right knee.
Oh my God.
8-inch. And they said the prognosis is not looking good. The weight bearing capacity on the right knee has literally come down to 20% or so. Sports is out of the question. He has to use a walker for a long time. And then once he gets better, he also has to use a cane, because there'll be a pronounced limp, because I was about 170 pounds, and just the weight of those pounds will not be sufficiently held by these two legs together. So I was very severely incapacitated. And what gutted me was not the fact that I'll have to use a cane or anything, but no sports at all. I was a serious sports lover. I mean, almost every Indian kid you grows up with this desire to become a cricketer, because cricketers are like the rock stars in our country. So and whatever little cricket I played, I was moderately successful. I enjoyed playing those reflex catches, those sliding stops. I was not gifted athletically, but whatever I did, I really enjoyed doing that. So to be able to be consigned to a life without sports was crushing. So when the doctor said no more sports, I it literally sent me back to my teenage days, saying, "Oh God, why me again?" It's like, and the prognosis was not something that I was willing to accept. So when they sent me for physiotherapy, and I talked a little bit about physiotherapy in my talk, what they do is they tie your leg into a sling and push it and pull it so that your flexion in the knee improves. Whatever little flexion you could get or the weight bearing capacity to enhance it. And I'm telling you, Christoph, that's the worst part of physiotherapy. You are in such agony and pain. At least in the surgery, you're in under amnesia,
Right.
you're anesthesia. So you don't know. But once this physiotherapy commences, it's like living hell every day. So I gave up physiotherapy after a while, and I said, yeah, this is not working out to me. I grew even more obese, and then I was terribly out of shape. And for about 6 to 9 months, I battled those ghosts. Then one day I realized I've been a fighter all my life, and I can't let this happen. For example, when I was walking with the walker or a cane, young girls would like cast very pitiful and sympathetic glares at me, and that used to be very awkward. I used to push and hide my cane and pretend as if I was like a cool dude just standing there for the
Oh.
sunshine, you know.
Oh.
I would wait till those girls go away and then resume my walk. So I could no longer hide it, and I said, there must be something I should do to do this. I want to prove these doctors wrong that I cannot live for the rest of my life with such incapacity. So to cut a long story short, from the year 2010 to till date, I not only overcame that cane, I no longer use a cane or anything. I decided to strengthen my knees and stuff. But here's the punchline. The bottom line was I ran six of the toughest marathons in the world. New York City, Boston, Chicago, Amsterdam. You, the joy of running a full marathon is unparalleled. So for someone who was said to that he could no longer walk normally or limp for the rest of their life, to just overcome all that and push yourself, break those barriers and push and push. And obviously, if you're training for a marathon, you really have to just put your sweat, blood, and toil out there. So just comes back to that. It's a marathon is a stupid piece of small metal that just you hang around your neck and put it on Facebook for a couple of days. It'll trend. But they say in the running world, pain is temporary, pride and joy is forever. Pain is temporary, but the joy that you crushed that wall, the joy that you pushed your body to go past the 26.2 mile mark, it just makes you feel superhuman. So anytime adversity strikes or a difficulty strikes in our life, it's not so much the magnitude of that, the impact that hits you. It's what you do after that. Different people have different types of adversity. Relational adversity, for no fault of yours, your partner might just cheat on you and walk away, or for no fault of yours, the children might do something stupid, for no fault of yours. So you go into these relationship crises, and that's a relational adversity. And then suddenly out of nowhere, something might a diagnosis might hit you and throw your life upside down. It's not the impact of what happens in our lives that determines who we are. It's what we do after that. How do we respond to that? How do we say, in that accident situation, I could have said, why me, God? Why are you picking me for preferential treatment when it comes to doling out adversity? I mean, I could have got bitter about God,
Yeah.
about people. I could have rejected everybody's advice, and I could have gone into a shell, and nobody would blame me because by then I had come through some serious difficulties. But I realized that's not who true fighters are. That's not true who true warriors are. They give it their best till the moment you really, really succumb finally. And so every day, I tell everybody, every day above the ground, 6 feet above the ground is a good day.
You
You
know,
got to keep fighting. You got to keep running.
your life is so much like a Disney movie, and that one thought that I've been having throughout this whole conversation. If I could buy the rights to your life, I would. It's such a fantastic story. The idea that you can build your way out of anything, out of having no money, out of having no food, out of having no opportunity, that you can just go back to the same person 45 times in a row, get admission for your sister, that you can work your way into a college, that you can train yourself out of therapy, out of the condition that doctor said you would be stuck with for life, and now you're running marathons. It's just amazing. It's I feel speechless. And again, Sunil, you have to understand that doesn't happen very often. And just to put sort of a button ending on this, can you tell people about what you do now?
Sure. I work for a large technology company as a marketing director. My day job is to work with my company and support them in marketing communications, PR, and so on and so forth. Somewhere along the line, I discovered I had a love for words. And Christoph, that's something that we both have in common. We really love telling our stories. Again, when I was in college, I was forced to go into a course called Electronics and Communications. I must tell you, those were the most torturous years of my life because, electronics and communications is a great field if it's for you, you're cut out for that.
Sure.
But I wasn't. And I endured 3 years of that, and I decided this is not meant for me. I need to find something that suits my DNA. And so it's not easy like in India. In the US, if you don't like something, opportunities abound. You could easily make the transition to do something you love. But in India, it's not like that. There are far too many people and far too few options and opportunities. So to slowly navigate to where I really got to, where my passion, my talents, my giftings, and the opportunities really lined up, it took a long way. And so, like I said, college was barred, but learning, there's no bar, right? You constantly evolve, you constantly reinvent. So in the last 10 years, I've been working with this company, one of the top Indian IT companies, and I enjoy working with them. In fact, my love for fitness is actually propelled by some of my corporate initiatives. The company's name is Tata.
Right.
We're really big in most parts of the world.
It's enormous.
Jaguar is one of our corporate brands.
And Jeep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe the company revenue is like something, tell me if I'm in the ballpark, 100 billion?
Yes.
Yeah, you're being
Yes.
modest, Sunil. It's Tata. It's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. So it's finally, like I said, right? When you are willing to put your hand on the grindstone and you're willing to grind your way out of anything, success is an inevitable factor. In fact, many of your listeners might wonder, how is it that someone with so few opportunities is today, after many years, at a very comfortable space? The single reason is have this vision that you want to pursue for your life. And sometimes it might involve your family, sometimes it might involve your spouse, but finally it's about your vision and how you're willing to put nothing behind, but just work your way out diligently, industriously, patiently, painstakingly. Many people think, if you're gifted, success should just come your way at an acceleration that you can't even handle. Success is rarely like that. It's like what you do week after week, month after month, and year after year, and then suddenly you see the fruit of your labor rewarding you.
Guys, this story deserves to be told in a 2-hour AAA Hollywood film filmed by the greatest directors in the world. It doesn't deserve to be captured here in a 43-minute format, but Sunil, I'm so grateful that you would come here and share your life story that embodies so many of the principles that I love people to hear about: the overcoming adversity, the persistence, the drive for success, and letting nothing stop you, not even where you are in the world or what opportunities you seemingly have or have not even your body. You don't even let your it's amazing. It's just amazing that a doctor could take out 8 inches, tell you you'll never walk again without a cane, and now be running marathons. I'm so grateful that you would come here and share this story with you. And I think people need to understand that you are not the bragging type in any way, shape, or form. People would see you, and you would spend 44 minutes and 18 seconds with them just because you're a nice guy who's generous with their time and advice and genuinely wants to make an impact on the people around them and use their story for good in such a beautiful way. Sunil, from the bottom of my heart, I love you, and I want to thank you for being on this show.
Christoph, before I go, I can't tell you how special you are. And I told my teenage son about you, and I hope someday you both will meet. And
I would love to.
You're very, very special to our family. God bless you in all your endeavors, and I can't wait to see you go from here, from strength to strength. And someday when you give an Oscar or some kind of an equivalent of Oscar speech, be sure that I'll be rooting for you.
Wow, you'll be in the Oscar speech, I'm sure. Okay.
Thank you
Sunil,
so much, Christoph.
thank you.
And thank you to all your listeners.